Imagine you haven't eaten in 2 days. You know exactly where the herd is. You tracked it yesterday. You found the prints. You mapped the route in your mind. And now all you have to do is get there. Then it starts raining. Not a light drizzle. A heavy, wind-driven rain that just won't stop. It pours all day, all night. And even the next morning it's still coming down. Now you can't hunt. You can't follow the tracks because the rain has washed them away. You can't move across the open ground because wet rocks and bare feet make a twisted ankle much more likely. And out here, a twisted ankle means death. The river near your camp is rising, and the fire, the one thing keeping you warm, keeping predators away, and helping you stay alive, is beginning to die. You're not bored, you're trapped. For most of human history, rain wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a crisis. And what ancient humans did during that crisis may have been more important than anything they did on a clear day. Today, when it rains, you close the windows, make yourself a cup of coffee, grab a blanket and turn on Netflix. You settle into the couch, find that perfect position, and relax. For you, rain is nothing more than background noise. It makes you feel calm. It makes you sleepy. You might not even finish the episode, but for a human living 50,000 years ago, that same rain, the exact same sound you fall asleep to, could kill you in 3 different ways before it ever stopped. The first danger was the cold. A wet human body loses heat up to 25 times faster than a dry one. Without proper clothing or a waterproof shelter, a long rainstorm in temperatures below about 50 degrees Fahrenheit could drop your core body temperature into the hypothermia range within just a few hours. And most of the places our ancestors lived became that cold at night, even in parts of Africa during the wet season at higher elevations. The second danger was flooding. Caves and rock shelters, where ancient humans often lived, were usually located at the base of hillsides or close to rivers. So heavy rain often meant flash floods. Archaeologists have discovered layers of flood sediment inside occupied caves, showing that water entered while people were still living there. Some of those sediment layers are so thick that researchers believe those caves were never used again. And the third danger, perhaps the worst, was predators. Rain forced animals to seek shelter too, and sometimes that shelter happened to be the very same cave you were using. There are cave sites in South Africa where human remains and the remains of large cats have been found in the same layers. Some of those human skulls have puncture marks that perfectly match leopard teeth. So rain didn't just make life uncomfortable. It compressed the entire world. Humans, predators, and prey were all squeezed into the same small, dry spaces at the same time. And in the middle of all that, one job mattered more than anything else: keeping the fire alive. And here's why that was so terrifying. Before roughly 40,000 years ago, we're not entirely sure how reliably humans could start a fire from scratch. There's evidence of controlled fire going back at least 400,000 years at a site called Kesem Cave in Israel, and possibly as far back as 1 million years at Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa. But here's the thing. Keeping a fire that already existed and creating one from nothing were 2 very different skills. And for most of human history, most people probably couldn't do the second one. So if your fire went out, you might never be able to light it again. You'd have to carry a burning ember from somewhere else, something that some groups actually did. They transported smoldering coals wrapped in green leaves or packed inside a type of woody mushroom called tinder fungus that could catch a spark and keep smoldering for hours. When researchers discovered Ötzi the Iceman, the 5,300-year-old frozen man preserved in the Alps, he was carrying a complete fire-starting kit in his belt pouch: tinder fungus, flint, iron pyrite for striking sparks, and extra plant tinder as a backup. Even 5,000 years ago, losing your fire was serious enough that people carried dedicated tools to keep it from going out. So when the rain came, the first priority wasn't shelter. It was the fire. Move it deeper into the cave. Protect it with hides or brush. Feed it carefully. Not too much, not too little. Look for dead lower branches from conifer trees, the ones still protected by the canopy above and usually dry underneath. Split open wet logs to reach the dry wood hidden inside. The dry wood inside. Use birch bark as kindling. Because birch contains a natural chemical called betulin that can still burn even when it's wet. One person's entire job during a rainstorm might have been simply sitting beside that fire for hours, feeding it, protecting it, and making sure it never went out because that fire was everything. It provided warmth, light, safety, cooked food, and was the center of every social interaction the group shared. Letting it go out wasn't just careless. It could have been fatal for everyone. So now the fire is still burning, and you're mostly dry, but you still can't leave. So what do? You make things. The archaeological record is very clear about this. Caves and rock shelters are packed with evidence of manufacturing. Stone tools in every stage of production. Piles of flaking debris, the tiny chips, of rock that fly off while shaping a tool, have been found. Concentrated in specific areas, inside caves, exactly where someone would sit near the firelight and work for hours. But it wasn't just stone tools. At Ablombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists discovered a 100,000-year-old ochre processing workshop. Abalone shells were used as mixing bowls. Ochre was ground into powder. Bone tools were used to stir and apply it. This wasn't just basic survival. This was production. Someone sat in that cave, probably while the rain poured outside, and deliberately produced pigment using a well-organized process. And then you've got bone needles. They begin appearing in the archaeological record around 1,000 years ago in South Africa, and later across Europe and Asia. These are delicate, finely crafted tools with tiny drilled eyes. You don't make a bone needle while you're running from danger. You make one when you're sitting still, completely focused, with hours to spare. Rainy days gave people that opportunity. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. At a Neanderthal site called Abri du Maras in France, archaeologists discovered a tiny fragment of twisted plant fiber string dating back, roughly, 52,000 years. That's the oldest direct evidence of string ever found. Then at Hohl Fels Cave in Germany, they uncovered a 35,000-year-old tool carved from mammoth ivory, with 4 holes and spiral grooves, designed specifically for twisting plant fibers into rope. Someone sat in that cave and carved a dedicated rope-making tool. Making rope is slow, repetitive, and requires patience. It's the perfect task for bad weather, and rope changed everything. It allowed people to tie things together, build stronger shelters, create snares and traps, and attach tools to wooden handles. An incredible amount of human technology depends on string, and string was almost certainly invented by someone stuck inside, waiting for the rain to stop. And it wasn't just tools and rope. People were also making their shelters more comfortable. At Dansibudu Cave in South Africa, archaeologists discovered something most people would never expect from Mizata 77,000 years ago. Bedding, real bedding, layers of sedges, rushes, and grasses carefully arranged into sleeping mats. The top layers even included leaves from a plant called Cape Laurel, a natural insect repellent. Someone wasn't simply surviving in that cave. They were making it comfortable. They were turning it into a home. The bedding was also burned and replaced from time to time to keep it clean. 77,000 years ago, people were already practicing a basic form of pest control. But here's where the story takes a turn that almost nobody expects. Because all of that, the tools, the rope, the bedding, that was the practical side of survival. What came next was something completely different. Art. Chauvet Cave in southern France contains paintings that are around 36,000 years old. Lions, horses, rhinos, and bears, drawn with a level of skill and observation that still amazes people today. The artists understood anatomy, movement, and perspective. Some of the animals are shown in mid-stride, with muscles tensed and heads turning. These aren't simple doodles. They're the work of people who spent thousands of hours watching these animals, then recreated them from memory deep inside the cave by the light of a fire. And Chauvet isn't the only example. Lascaux, Altamira, and the caves of Sulawesi in Indonesia also contain ancient artwork, with some cave paintings dating back at least 145,000 years. Making them among the oldest known figurative art in the world. But here's what makes this truly fascinating. These paintings weren't created near the entrance of the cave. where people would normally stay for shelter. They were made deep inside, sometimes hundreds of meters from the entrance, through narrow passages and chambers that people had to crawl through just to reach. Someone carried animal fat lamps into complete darkness and painted. And think about that for a moment. Nobody does that when the weather is perfect and hunting is going well. You do it when you can't go outside. When the rain has been falling for 2 straight days, you've already sharpened every tool you own, and there's nothing left to do except venture deeper into the darkness and create something. Now, we can't prove that cave art was a rainy day activity, but the idea makes sense. The greatest creative explosion in human prehistory happened in the very places where people were most likely to be, trapped indoors for long periods. And that leads to an even bigger idea. Rain didn't just inspire art. It may have helped create culture itself. Think about it. What happens when 15 to 30 people are forced to stay together in a confined space? For days with very little to do, they talk, they listen, they share information. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Wiesner published a study comparing daytime conversations with nighttime fireside conversations among the Honsi Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert. During the day, people mostly talked about practical things, land rights, resources, and everyday problems. But at night, gathered around the fire, more than 80% of the conversation shifted to stories, songs, and ceremonies. The firelight changed the way people communicated. It softened faces, eased tension, and created a space where people felt comfortable opening up. The campfire wasn't just a source of warmth. It was humanity's very first social network. And the knowledge shared around that fire wasn't just casual conversation. It was essential for survival, where the water sources dried up during summer, which plants were safe to eat, where the best flint deposits could be found, and how to track a particular animal. That wasn't gossip. It was vital knowledge being passed from one mind to another through spoken words. And beyond the practical information, there was something even more important. Stories, myths, and explanations for why the rain came and where it went. The video has become very long, so I ended the video here. If you want to watch the last episode of this story, if you want to see it then, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I will release it soon. We'll upload the next part